This is a beautiful image of Ashtāpada, and we've been calling a lot of these sites pilgrimage sites. But before I begin taking you through the iconography on this choḍ, it's important to realize that Ashtāpada has been conflated over time with Mount Kailāsa located in the Himalayan region. But it's unclear whether or not Ashtāpada was actually locatable on Earth as Mount Kailāsa, or if it was located elsewhere, or if it remained purely mythological or unidentifiable. And this is because the first Jina of this time cycle, Rishabhanātha, was said to have achieved liberation on Ashtāpada. And he was the first Jina many, many eons ago. And his son, after he had reached liberation of the body, which in the Jain tradition is called nirvana, and his sons, most of his sons, also reached liberation. His one son, Bharata, who was the king, a Chakravartin at that time, decided to build a shrine in honor of his father and his brothers. So Bharata had created the shrine on Mount Ashtāpada. And with many of those pilgrimage places, we were dealing with mountains. And that's why, in a sense, we're calling this a pilgrimage place, if not physically, then at least psychologically, visually, emotionally, spiritually, religiously. But in any case, Bharata built this shrine of 24 Jinas, enlightened beings, in honor of his father. And there were these images, and you can see here, which is this part right here is showing the main shrine, images of the 24 Jinas, and these were statues, and they were made out of precious gems. So what's really beautiful here is that the person who made this choḍ actually kept the coloring of some of these, what would have been these icons in, let's say, ruby or emerald. They've kept the color of those gems here. So we have, and there's a tradition in the Jain tradition of different Jina images being presented in different colors for different forms of meditation. In any case, we have the sense of Bharata having created these images made out of precious gems, and there are a whole combination of stories that get situated on this mountain, and that's really what this putta is showing here. So Bharata creates the shrine, but it's called Ashtāpada because in Sanskrit, Ashta means 8, pada, steps. So Bharata created 8 steps to protect the shrine, and only those who were supremely accomplished spiritually could reach the shrines and scale the steps. So it's a very difficult feat, and that's what takes us, let's say, down to the bottom, this bottom register right here. So we have the chief disciple of Mahāvīra, who's the 24th Jina, okay, and Rishabha would be here. And then, of course, we have all the other Jinas. Mahāvīra's chief disciple, and he's a 24th, so now we're moving forward in time. Guatama decides he wants to make pilgrimage to Ashtāpada, and he's able to do so because of his great fasting and religious practice and spiritual practice and the evocation of mantras. So here we see Guatama, and Guatama is being shown here reaching Ashtāpada, reaching the shrines on Ashtāpada. But down below are a group of sadhus, a group of ascetics, who look at Gautama longingly and wish they too could achieve what he's achieved and reach the shrines. When Gautama comes back, they're breaking their fast, and they decide that they want to be initiated by Gautama and convert. And Gautama helps them break their fast by feeding them a bowl of rice pudding. And so he is shown here, if you can see here and zoom in here, that it's through Gautama's one bowl of rice pudding that he's able to fill the bowls of all these ascetics. And what's really interesting iconographically here is that you don't really see, you see the bodies in the kind of thread here, but they're kind of all grouped together as one, right? And so there's several of them. And so what's nice about how they depicted them is that they're all kind of one group, and they're shown that kind of like this merging of bodies and lack of distinction of bodies here. So that's what's happening here in this register. If we come over to this side, we have another story. And this is the Jain-sized version, or the Jain version of a Hindu story of how Ganga came to earth. And it's said that Ganga came from the heavens and that the sons of Sāgara built this moat around Ashtāpada. And when Ganga came, she filled up, it was this rushing, intense ocean water, filled up this moat. And it disturbed these demigods, these nagas, who lived underneath. And so, in revenge, the head naga comes and kills all of Sāgara's sons. So it's a very well-known story, and here you have it depicted on this low register. And obviously the moat is below the steps, so it's taking place in this corner of the lower register. But there are also other figures, characters, and stories associated with Ashtāpada. Another one is of the 10-headed Rāvaṇa, and he is the villain, so to speak, of the Rāmayanā. He abducts Sita, and in certain versions, there's a story of Rāvaṇa in his chariot crossing over Mount Kailāsa. Like I said, Ashtāpada is often conflated with Kailāsa, and he wants to crush the mountain with his toe, but is unable to do so. And so here, in this story, in the Jain story, he comes to Mount Kailāsa, and he's not the one to crush the mountain, but he causes a lot of turbulence. But there's a Jain sage who is doing ascetic practice and saves the mountain by pressing his own toe on the mountain. And so Rāvaṇa concedes and takes initiation, possibly through this Jain ascetic. Now, what's interesting here is that you don't have all 10 heads of Rāvaṇa. I think you have 7, and then you have this instrument-like thing coming out here, which is a very different depiction than from what you would see on paintings. There is a painting, a very nice painting, that is very similar to this in the Victorious Ones catalog. And then this is possibly Mandodari or Mandodari. This is Ravana's wife. And then here you have other ascetics who are performing different penance. And these kinds of ascetics are described also in stories related to Ashtāpada. So you have more or less 3 registers. You also have this idea of Ashtāpada being a beautiful heavenly mountain. So you'll still have this sort of floral imagery around the shrine. You have the flag. These are all indicators of a shrine. But in some images, you really get the sense of a very beautiful place, right? So, and then you have the shrine keepers, of course, and that really is the Ashtāpada that's being shown here. And, one argument I've made in an article or a paper I had given was that even though Ashtāpada might be spoken about in these mythological terms, it was conflated with Mount Kailāsa. So there's something about place that's so significant here, and about having a place of worship and referencing a place that has meaning and making it meaningful. So maybe that's one reason why it was conflated with Kailāsa. Jains have looked for Kailāsa. There was an international foundation that went looking for it in the Himalayas, and so it's still unknown, again, whether or not it was an actual mountain or where it was located exactly.